Hey everyone, we've got another amazing podcast series on the Phantom Podcast. We are lucky enough to be blessed by Mark Dommen's presence today. For anybody who's newly listening to our podcast, this is a podcast to highlight the amazing people in the industry. Right now, we're talking to Mark Dommen, who is I believe, Bay Area native and has had an extensive history working at one market. I'm sure he'll talk about his previous experiences and why he got into the business that he's in now. But before I ruin and lose everybody on this podcast, I'm going to give it to Mark to do a very good intro on himself because I'm not doing it any justice.
Well, thank you for having me. First of all, it's quite the pleasure to be here. Um, so anyway, my name is Mark Domen. I'm the chef partner at One Market Restaurant in San Francisco. I've been there for a little over 17 years. In September, it'll be 18, and that's quite the long haul there. And before that, I opened Julia's Kitchen at Copia, which was in Napa, and then I did some traveling through Europe where you stage. Staging is where you work for free to gain experience. And I lived and worked in New York, and I started out in the Bay Area. I'm a San Francisco native, as you mentioned, and I began my career at Fleur de Lis in San Francisco. So at the time, it was one of the best restaurants.
That's fantastic because we actually had Ethan Howard, who was the pastry chef at Fleur de Lis. I'm not sure if you guys' years overlapped, but it's quite interesting that a lot of the people that I've seen have been sparked their success kind of all started at that restaurant.
Yeah, well, our times didn't overlap. I was there late 80s. That'll give you a little
Mm,
idea how old
okay.
I am. But I was just out of culinary school, and that was my first job out of culinary school. So 80, 89, 90, into the 90s. So.
And did you know, like, when did you get into culinary school? Was it did you go straight into culinary school, or were you kind of thinking about, maybe trying out the industry first and then you kind of went into it? Curious about that story.
No, so when I turned 16, my dad wanted me to get a summer job. I grew up in the wine country. We had a small vineyard that I grew up on, and my dad, when I turned 16, I got my driver's license, and he was like, either you get a job to pay for your gas, or I'm going to put you to work on the vineyard, right? So I said, oh, I'm going to get a job, right? And I ended up getting a job as a dishwasher in Santa Rosa at this continental. They called it continental cuisine at the time, and. And so by the end of the summer, that was the summer I turned 16. And then by the end of that summer, I was in the pantry making salads. And then I went back to that restaurant every summer thereafter, my junior year and then my senior year, because I enjoyed it, right? And I was getting good, and they were teaching me how to cook. And then my parents were immigrants from Europe, right? So they encouraged us all to learn a craft or a trade, right?
Hmm.
uh, Instead of going to college right away. So that's with that encouragement, they're like, okay, my senior year, what are you going to do with yourself? You got to figure out what you're going to do with yourself. Um, and so I was like, well, I'm cooking. I'm gonna be, I'm gonna cook because that's what I enjoy, and that's what I'm pretty good at it. And so I just kind of started that path at that time. I took a year off. I graduated high school in '87. I took a year off, and then I started culinary school in '88. So I did go right away. I went to the junior college for a year, and then I went to culinary school after that. And then I did go to college after that and got my degree my undergrad in hospitality management at USF. So I did follow
Oh,
I
cool.
didn't do it exactly traditionally, but kind of did it all.
Yeah, that is a path that you kind of picked on fairly quickly. Like the other stories that I've kind of listened to and history and experiences, everyone's like, yeah, I started out just kind of like you, started a summer job, making some money on the side. Then I realized, hey, maybe I'll go get a degree in psychology or I'll get a degree in something else, and then realize where their passions lied, and then they would roll into culinary school if they actually did get into culinary school. So it seems like from the age of 16 you were pretty honed in on a target and you pushed forward on that one. That's quite cool, actually.
Well, it was with encouragement from my parents as well, because that's the path. They had a similar path in Europe as they were growing up. You did an apprenticeship, and then you went on and followed your career path. So, one of the reasons why I didn't go to culinary school right out of high school was because I did have the opportunity. My family's Swiss, from Switzerland, and we did look into the possibility of me doing an apprenticeship in Switzerland instead of going to culinary school, but I chose
Hmm.
culinary school instead.
Yeah, and then you mentioned something quite interesting is where you kind of worked for free. That was out in Europe, correct?
Correct. So I don't know how many people actually do it anymore, but it's called stage. You become a stagiaire and you stage. And so a lot of if you look at a lot of the chefs who are extremely successful in the United States, a lot of them have done stages. You go to Europe, and it's either I did it in Michelin 2 and 3 star restaurants. And you work for free. They usually give you a place to room to live in, and you work for free. And it gives you it's a way to open up your eyes, learn a lot of great new techniques that you haven't maybe come across in the United States. And you work really hard. You work really hard. You learn a lot. And it's a way to get more exposure, a way to learn, and just hone the craft.
How old were you when you did your stage?
I was 30. I was 29, 30. Yeah, I was 30.
Hmm. Yeah, because
So, uh,
that's quite interesting because I haven't heard of people actually doing that today. And what's amazing is like you're looking at social media and you're kind of listening to all the motivational stuff. Maybe the algorithm knows me, right? It's pumping all this motivational stuff, and everyone's like, if you want to learn something, right, put your ego aside and work for free for a little bit on the people that you want to learn from, right? So if you wanted to be a Michelin star chef, work for free for these people. So I'm curious on how long that actually lasted, and it's amazing to see that in this industry because I feel like people are quick on the trigger to leave the industry because it's getting too tough. It's like, hey, maybe I'll just DoorDash for a bit, or try to take my like take at being a home chef and an influencer or whatever it might be. So, tell me more about that specifically. Like, how long did it last
well, it's
for? What were the pros and cons of doing something like that, and
most of the
do you
stage.
recommend it to other people?
Of course, I recommend it. I don't know if how much it's being done anymore, actually. Um, but so a lot of the 3 star chefs in France, and I did mine I did it in Germany. I did a 2 star restaurant, a Michelin 2 star restaurant in Switzerland, and then I did Louis Cannes in Monte Carlo, which is 3 Michelin stars as well, Italian Ducasse. Um, and so a lot of them have different parameters. You have to stay for 3 months. And you have to commit to it, make a time commitment, and you become part of the team by doing that. I was fortunate enough; I didn't have to go. I did 3 months, but not in one place. I moved around, and I was fortunate enough. Like for Louis Cans in Monte Carlo, one of the chefs that I worked for, Jean-Louis Paladin. He was good friends with Alain Ducasse, and Alain Ducasse wasn't taking any more stages, or at least American stages, at the time, and because I think he had a bad experience. So he accepted me as a stage, and I stayed for a month, and it was a great experience. And because I was Jean Louis sous chef at the time when I went. I got treated really well because a lot of times, sometimes you don't get treated quite as well, or it takes you time to warm, or it takes them time to warm up to you, and actually start really showing you a lot of things. I got that experience right away, and I was all because I had worked for Jean Louis. So it was great. It was awesome. When you're going to a country that you don't necessarily know the language, I don't speak very the French that I know is very minimal. Um, you learn a lot about yourself, right, as well. Not just,
Hmm.
cooking and the craft that you're working on, but you also learn about your character and what you can handle and stuff like that. Because you're I traveled by myself. I was going to a country that, I didn't necessarily know the language. I didn't really know anybody there. So it teaches you a lot about yourself as well.
Hmm. And did you lock down, let's say, where you were going to work for before you left overseas, or did you fly out, land there, and say, okay, I'm going to go attack these to try to see if I can get some, work placement?
No, we had them. I had them lined up before I left. And you have to do that because otherwise, they're not going to. They At the time that I was doing it, they would line up like summer season or whatever. They would line up their stages for the summer early on. That way, they count on them for labor. So, the restaurant counts on a stage to do a certain amount of labor. So they have them. They need to have them lined up as well. They can't just like you're not just extra. You're part of the team and as a stagiaire. Uh, so they have them lined up.
And do you have any stagiaires currently today working for you, or is this
No,
something
we
that you
don't.
haven't applied
We
at
stopped.
one market today?
So we used to. Uh, well, we used to have people stage before they accepted a job, right? So they'd come in for a day and show you what they could do, and it gives them an idea of what the restaurant's like. Uh, and so we don't do that anymore, and we've stopped. I can't tell you how long ago we stopped doing that because people now want to get paid. So they
Hmm.
won't work for free, and you can't. You have to pay everybody. It's for every hour they work. So we don't take stages, and we don't have people stage before they take a job anymore. Um, they come in, we hire them, and they get paid from the moment. We don't even do interns from like the CIA that are unpaid. We used to do that a long time ago as well, but now all the interns or externs they get paid as well.
Is that more on rules and regulations, or is this just kind of the demand of the market today?
I think it's a little bit of both. It's rules and regulations because they can come back and sue you for it, and it's the demands of the market, right? Labor market's so tight that nobody's going to work for free these days.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I would almost say that there lies an opportunity for anyone who would be willing to learn experiences from kind of the top chefs like yourself. So, that is, my next kind of question kind of goes into the future of the industry, right? And the future of talent kind of being poured into it, because we currently live in a world now which is quite unique, and we could talk about COVID and the impacts of what they did to the industry. But where I'm kind of worried about, just as an outsider looking into this industry, is where do we think the future talent is coming? Do you even think there is a lesser of the talent pool that you had previously that you can pull from to kind of create these experiences and innovate even further as the industry moves on?
Um, I think the talent pool is coming from a different a different area now, where like a lot of my guys are Latinos, right? And they are extremely talented. So instead of bringing somebody in, they necessarily didn't go to culinary school, but they've got a lot of work experience. So I try to foster them and foster their creativity and work with them and give them confidence. And you can see it. My sous chef right now, he's been with me. I started at one market in September. He started in December, and he's been with me ever since. Right, he was a line cook,
Wow.
and then now he's one of my sous chefs, and just working with him and bringing the creativity out of him. Right, that's where I see a lot of it coming from. I have my core team of guys have been with me, 15 plus years, and they are at this point. I don't have to like. walk them through it. I can tell them what I'm thinking, and they'll create. So the next step is, getting them to think of that on their own. But they, I think that's for me. That's where my energy lies. Um, and there's still young cooks that are going to culinary school and learning. Um, but again, it's such a tight market that you're going to try and go to, if you're a young cook, you're going to try and work at the French Laundry, or Manresa or Atelier Cren or something like that. That's going to be your target first. So for me, I'm trying to foster it from within, with my guys that have been with me for so long.
So, and I've heard this theme before, and it's kind of being reiterated in kind of the new age, just because, life is expensive these days. So some people are just recommending experience over, education in this route and try to grab as much as you can. I think we're in a moment where the new talent, if they can stick this out in the process and in the industry, they will be one of the most successful people for the future of this business, right? Because I'm almost seeing a thinning of the herd. And that makes me worried in the sense of, where do we pass the reins on? And I think when you run your system or your restaurants and how you operate them, what I love about what you just said is that you foster the talent from within, and you're building that process and that success with the people that are in house. So, kudos to you on that one. I think from a general standpoint and from an industry standpoint, are we going to be hitting a wall and seeing, amazing talent come through, or is it just a shift on where it comes from?
I think it's a shift on where it comes from, and I think it's going to come from it constantly coming from different directions, right? And so I think it's going to continue to do that, come from different um, different areas. And it's funny because it's not just cooking as well. You have to know how to run a business as well, and you know that's another factor that comes into it. Um, as far you can be the most creative person, but not necessarily the most successful businessman on top of it. So
Mhm.
it's kind of that's the challenge is marrying those two together.
And you got a degree in hospitality management. Did that help from a business perspective? Like, do you still pull from what you've learned when you studied that in how you operate your business today?
Absolutely, because that was I went to the University of San Francisco, and it was part of the business school, or it is part of the business school, the hospitality management program. So all the accounting and marketing and everything that goes along with it. That's the part that I pull from the most.
And when we talk about business, and especially in this industry, I always like to ask the question, how rough was the past 2 years, right? There was shutdowns. Like, I remember I would walk by one market and it would be packed, right? It would be hard to get reservations. We've got execs coming from out of town, or investors that we always supported in that restaurant, right? And so it's even an honor just talking to you around this. But how did you navigate the landscape over the past 2 years, or even currently, with what was happening, and where do you kind of see yourself adapting and changing for the future?
So it's been a rough 2 years, because we closed for 3 months, and then we started doing takeout delivery. And you're not making money with takeout delivery, at least in a restaurant that size.
Mhm.
Um, and so, but we did it to remain relevant, right? So that people would know that we're still there. And then in that process, um, we pivot. Our pivot was we started a New York style deli. Um, called Mark and Mike's. A shameless plug here with my shirt.
Oh, nice.
Um,
I love it.
but we started that, and that was very well received. And so we have the, and now we've also um, we're a little bit less formal in our approach, right? We become a little more casual, um, and we're trying to appeal to a broader audience and a little bit younger audience. Our demographic tends to skew a little older, and so we're just trying to ride it out. We were gaining momentum several times last year. We were gaining momentum, and then another variant kicked in, and then it dropped. And same thing, the holiday season, December was really good for us, and then Omicron kicked in, and January was horrible. So it's just we're just kind of riding it out and doing the best we can. We're looking forward to downtown. The financial district still hasn't repopulated. There's not many people working
Mhm.
downtown right now. And then as you said, when people come from out of town, business travelers, we're looking forward to them returning as well. So we've just been kind of riding it out, and we've seen some momentum, and then another variant kicks in. So hopefully these variants have less and less impact, and we can get back to normal.
And then Mark and Mike's, is that getting operated out of one market currently today, or do you guys have another kind of smaller storefront?
No, it's out of one market, and so we do to go. We have it's all available to go, and then we've incorporated a lot of it into our lunch menu. So it's our lunch menu is heavy Mark and Mike's, and then at dinner we've incorporated a little less of Mark and Mike's. So it's more one market at night and a little bit of Mark and Mike's, and then at lunch it's a lot of Mark and Mike's and a little bit less of the traditional one market. And then we have a at the farmers market on Saturdays. We have a little booth over there at the ferry building, and that's been quite fun. That's we've gained quite the following over at the farmers market, so it's been a lot of fun to do that.
Yeah, and it just shows you your business lens on kind of the market. What's very interesting is I've been here in San Francisco from when the pandemic hit, right? And I was one of the crazy people that just kind of keep chugging along, saying, "Hey, it's only going to be for 6 weeks," and then it turned into another month, and then it turned into a few more months, and then we were just kind of like saying, "Hey, tomorrow's going to be a different day," and then naturally we just kind of woke up and assumed, things are going to be changing, but what's interesting is, and this is just my opinion, I don't really have too much data on it, is that a lot of people left and they didn't move too far. They went to Marin, they went to East Bay, they went to Fremont or South Bay to kind of get more land. But what am I seeing now coming in is a younger demographic. It's those kids or young adults who are like, hey, I always wanted to try out the city. And San Francisco, in my opinion, is a great starter city. So I think your move and your shift to kind of get to that younger demographic is actually quite smart and the right move. And I think I have some intros that I need to make for you into kind of co-working spaces, because what's happening is there's more of a demand in co-working spaces right now than having your traditional office space, because people want flexibility and uncertainty. And so definitely a market you can really tap into, because what I see around in downtown is like Sweet Green open versus any other restaurant. So I think it's that quick grab and go lunch is the right move.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're looking forward to feeding everybody.
Yeah, that's good. So again, one thing I think we're passing over, which is probably one of the most amazing accolades you can get as a chef and partner, is when you kind of received those Michelin stars at one market, right? Like, tell me the work that kind of went into it. Did you know and drive yourself to say, hey, I want a star, or did it just happen as a side effect of you perfecting the experience?
It just happened as a side effect. So, based on my experience, like doing the staging and what I saw in Europe, I never expected a restaurant as large as one market. One market, we have 150 seats. It's a really big restaurant. So I never expected a Michelin star in a restaurant that big. It was just about, doing going to work and producing the food that I learned how to make, um, or using the techniques that I learned how to make, right? Or that I learned over time, right? The classic French techniques, the blend of modern technique in there as well. The food's very technique driven, and so doing that, you get a great result from doing that. So I think it was the end that was the result of applying all those techniques that I learned, the craft, honing the craft, and things like that. And yeah, we got a call from the Michelin guide saying that we got a star. So it was pretty overwhelming at the time. Um, and again, we maintained it. We maintained the star for 6 years. Um, 5 or 6 years. And then the Michelin Guide changed directors, and I think their focus changed a little bit. So we had to give it back, but it was an honor to have it and earned it, and I was very proud of that, and I still am. So it was pretty cool.
I'd definitely be proud. I think that is a very hard process to win from, and especially, I know they don't necessarily compete stars from a region standpoint. Correct me if I am wrong, but San Francisco is highly competitive when it comes to food. So making that star happen in San Francisco in kind of FIDI for 5 to 6 years running, you're a six Pete right now. So be proud.
Thanks.
Yeah.
No, it was, and it's and the Michelin Guide is pretty. It's very highly respected all over the world. So it brings in guests from everywhere, especially in San Francisco with all the tourist traffic that we used to have.
Yeah. And I think fingers crossed that this is going to change. I'm in Cow Hollow area right now. I see kind of hustling and bustling streets, and that's kind of more the boroughs of San Francisco. My idea is that we're going to see that trickle in kind of happen in April timeframe. Again, don't quote me on that because this is probably the fifth time I have been wrong on predicting that. But at the end of the day, San Francisco is a city that will, in my opinion, never die. It will just evolve differently, just like how you've evolved your business and how you're targeting a different market. I definitely see that happening. And if you're doing it already and kind of pivoting, trust me, you're going to set yourself up for that future very well. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So where is the future for you? What do you see yourself doing in the next kind of 1, 2, 3 years? Do you have any kind of plans that you really want to do, or is it just get back to the grindstone and make things happen?
Well, we definitely want to get back to where we were, right, with the restaurant, and the level of business that we were doing. It's um, one of the reasons why I've been there for that long, um, is because once I have a family, I have two young girls, and it's expensive to live here. So having a
Hmm.
stable job in a great restaurant, and a lot of creative freedom, and I'm a partner in the restaurant. It's kept me grounded, and I've been able to um, be able to help support my family, um, between my wife and I. So, being young in the industry. It's awesome because you can jump around, you can travel. I took advantage of that when I was younger, right? Traveling, moving to different cities. But I found that once I started having a family, I needed to settle down and be stable. For them and for all of us. So for right now, the goal is to, as COVID hopefully some point starts settling down, is to get the restaurant back to where it was, um, level of business and everything, like that. And then down the road, I don't know, we don't know if we're going to take Mark and Mike's a little further and do something else with that, or or anything like that. So right now, it's the focus is to keep going and make one market, bring it back to the level it was pre-COVID.
Amazing. Well, Mark, it was such a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you for taking the time. I always want to let my audience members know where they can find you. So, how if they wanted to come around one market, where do they go? How do they message you? Who do they follow on Instagram? Let us know how we could do that.
So One Market is at our name is our address. So we're at One Market Street. We're across from the Ferry Building, right where Market Street starts. Our website is onemarket.com. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm Dommen, MDOMMEN, and the restaurant's Instagram is One Market SF. I think it's underscore SF. And you can find us there. And I'm constantly posting pictures of food and stuff like that. Um, and it's a lot of it's a lot of fun. But One Market, right at the start of Market Street.
I love it. Yeah. So everybody go flood that restaurant if we can. I'll definitely be stopping by very soon, Mark, and I'll let you know. But it's such an amazing story to hear your experience from 16 to going to hospitality management, to going to culinary school, to staging overseas, to then, you know, uh, getting yourself starred with a Michelin star at one market, and then now pivoting and creating another entity called Mark and Mike's. I definitely only see future success with you. And thank you so much for hopping on.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. It's always fun to have a great conversation.